Today, we're going to break down the anatomy of a political rise that has completely reshaped not just Italy, but the entire European political landscape. Giorgia Meloni's journey from total outsider to prime minister is a masterclass in modern ideology, branding, and power. Honestly, it's an essential case study for any student of political science.
Look, you can see her as a patriot who's restoring national pride, or you can see her as a walking cautionary tale from history. But either way, one thing is absolutely undeniable: her impact is profound. So what we're going to do in this explainer is analyze the exact mechanisms and strategies she used to get there.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to look at her journey in 5 distinct phases. First, how her ideology was forged. Second, her strategic rise as an outsider. Then her absolute masterclass in branding. After that, the mechanics of her historic victory. And finally, the collision course with the reality of actually being in charge.
So let's start right at the beginning, because to really understand any political leader, you have to understand the person first. You have to understand the world that made them who they are.
Meloni's story doesn't start in some privileged, well-connected family. It starts in a working-class neighborhood in Rome. And if there's one biographical detail you need to know, it's this: her father abandoned the family. Now, this wasn't just a personal tragedy. It became the furnace that forged her core political belief: self-reliance. From a really young age, she decided that no one was coming to save her. And that mindset would later define her entire political platform.
And this really makes you think, right? How often does a leader's personal story become the actual blueprint for their political agenda? In her case, the connection seems unbelievably direct.
So picture this. At age 15, when most of us are just trying to fit in, Meloni was looking for a mission. Her entry into politics wasn't some accident. It was a conscious search for an ideology, a framework that could help her make sense of the world and her place in it.
And these are the pillars she landed on. Now, you have to understand the context here. In post-war Italy, with its very specific history, an emphasis on super strong national identity, traditionalism, and tight borders. Well, for many people, that sounded like a dangerous echo of the past. Critics called these ideas extremists, but she just framed them as common sense. And this ideological foundation would turn out to be incredibly consistent throughout her whole career.
All right, so next up, let's see how that ideology actually translated into a political career. Her early years show this really unique way of navigating Italy's, let's be honest, chaotic system. She didn't win by playing the game better than everyone else. She won by strategically refusing to play it at all.
Now just take a look at the speed of her ascent on this timeline. I mean, it is just remarkable. From a teenage activist to getting national attention in her 20s, to then, at just 31 years old, becoming the youngest minister in the entire history of Italy. This was not a slow burn, it was a rocket ship. And here's the key strategic insight, her secret weapon really. In a political system that is just defined by constant change and instability, her consistency became her greatest asset. While all the other politicians were busy shuffling allegiances just to survive, she was building a brand of ideological purity. This let her just wait, bide her time, until the political landscape finally shifted her way. This brings us to a hugely important part of her rise, the moment she stopped just being a politician and started building a brand. For anyone studying political communication, this is an absolute masterclass. So in 2012, she takes this massive risk. She co-founds a brand new party that at the time was seen as completely marginal. But Meloni saw what the mainstream was missing. This deep, growing frustration bubbling up from the public about the economy, about immigration, and about this feeling that the elites in charge were totally disconnected from their lives.
And this slide explains the strategy she absolutely perfected. By staying outside of the government, she mastered the art of opposition politics. It allowed her to loudly and clearly attack everything the government did wrong, without ever being on the hook to fix it herself. It's a position of huge political power, especially in a fractured system.
As she got better and better at being this outsider, her messaging changed. She moved away from all the complex policy talk and started focusing on something way more powerful: identity and emotion. And this all came together in one phrase that would come to define her entire brand.
I am Giorgia. I am a woman. I am a mother. I am Italian. I am Christian. It's so simple, so direct. It went viral and became the absolute core of her political identity. But let's be crystal clear here. This was never just a slogan. It was a carefully designed political strategy. Every single piece of that sentence was meant to forge a direct, emotional bond with a specific group of Italian voters who felt like they had been completely overlooked and forgotten.
And now we come to the climax of our case study. This is a moment where all that strategic positioning, all that branding, and all of that patience finally paid off in a huge, huge way.
By the late 2010s, the conditions in Italy were just perfect for an insurgent candidate. Trust in the establishment had hit rock bottom. People were angry, they were tired, and they were looking for something, anything, that felt authentic. Meloni had spent a decade building her platform for this exact moment.
And in 2022, the political earthquake happened. Against the predictions of pretty much all the pollsters and experts, her Brothers of Italy party won. And it wasn't just the victory. It was a political statement that sent shockwaves all across Europe. The result was immediately and intensely polarizing. I mean, on the one hand, you had this incredible, historic milestone, Italy's first female prime minister. But on the other hand, there was this deep fear, both at home and abroad, about what her ideology would actually mean for Italy and for the European Union.
Which brings us to today, and to the ultimate test for any outsider who finally makes it to the inside, the cold, hard reality of governing.
This slide really captures the two completely different stories that are defining her time in office. Her supporters see a pragmatic leader who's focused on national sovereignty, on trying to get the economy stable, on controlling immigration. But her critics, they see a divisive culture war agenda that's trying to roll back progressive reforms and bring back some dangerous old ideologies. The tension between those two views is everything right now.
And this really gets to the core problem for her. I mean, winning an election on sharp, defiant ideology is one thing. Actually governing a complex G7 nation with all the constraints of the EU and the global economy is something else entirely. Her biggest challenge now is navigating that huge gap between the campaign promises that got her here and the pragmatic realities of actually using that power.
Ultimately, Giorgia Meloni's story teaches us a powerful lesson about modern politics. Power doesn't always come from consensus and compromise. Sometimes it's forged in pure opposition. Her rise has undeniably changed the political landscape in Italy, and it leaves us with the one defining question that will shape her legacy. Will she be remembered as a nationalist reformer or as a democratic disruptor?